Chapter 40 finds Joseph in jail for the awful deed of not taking advantage of his master's wife. So he's done the right thing. He honored God. He was also honorable to his master. He's respectful to this woman, but he pays a price, and they throw him into jail. But while he's in jail, he runs into two men who have also been put in prison, a cupbearer and a baker for the king of Egypt, or the Pharaoh. Now, why these two men? Well, most likely there was a concern for a plot against Pharaoh. One of the easiest ways to get rid of a monarch back in the good old days was poisoning. It happened on numerous occasions among the Roman emperors later on. You couldn't go in and kill them directly. You couldn't stab them, that kind of thing. That was pretty difficult to do, but you could poison them. And many times people did that, including wives and so forth. So the leaders caught on and had cupbearers who would eat and taste the food and drink before the king would, to make sure that no bad stuff was in there. If they died, of course, the Pharaoh knew he shouldn't take that food or that drink. So that was what the cupbearer did. The baker, of course, cooked the food. So something was concerning a plot here. Somebody had caught a plot. And the two possible culprits were the cupbearer or the baker. So we don't know who yet. So they're both in jail. And so we find these two men now living there in the jail with Joseph. They both have dreams. And one of them dreams a dream concerning we find in verse 5 and so forth, that they have dreams. They don't know what those dreams mean. Joseph will come along and interpret the dreams. Now, Joseph is unique. The other patriarchs couldn't do this, and most other prominent individuals in the Old Testament did not interpret dreams. The two that are outstanding is Joseph and Daniel. Most of the rest, that did not happen, except when we had visions or prophecies God gave the prophets. But Joseph is unique. He's already had some dreams when he was back home when he was 17 years old. But now he is going to interpret the dreams for these two. And he tells the cupbearer in verse 9, he says, things are going to go well with you. In 3 days, you're going to be released from prison, and all will be well for you. Well, the baker was pretty excited about that. And so he thought, well, that was a good turnout for the cupbearer. Mine will be as well. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Joseph tells him in verses 18 and 19 that you're going to be hanged on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh. That wasn't a real good interpretation for the baker. Now, most likely, he was involved in some kind of plot against the king, or at least they thought he was. So at any rate, he lost his life. One of the things that stands out of the chapter, though, is after he had interpreted the dream positively for the cupbearer, he says in verse 14, "Only keep me in mind when it goes well with you, and please do me a kindness by mentioning to Pharaoh and get me out of this house." Now, Joseph was doing his best. He was the exemplary example that he always was, but he didn't want to be in jail. And so he asked the cupbearer to put in a good word with the Pharaoh. But we leave the chapter with these words, "And yet the cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him." Isn't it amazing how often we forget the good deeds that somebody does for us? We might remember for years something they did evil to us or some way they harmed us. We carry a grudge or tend to. But when somebody has done many wonderful things for us, we just kind of forget them. We shove them off to the side. Whatever the reason, the cupbearer did not talk to Pharaoh. And when we pick up verse 1 of the next chapter, it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh has a dream. 2 years now go by. 2 more years for Joseph to be rotting away in prison for doing good deeds. He has done nothing wrong. We'll find out a little bit later on that he altogether, from the time he left, was brought into slavery, to the time that these events take place, has been 13 years. And Joseph has lived a life that is honoring to God, and yet things have not turned out very well for him at this point. But we know the Lord has a plan. Even in the life of these dreams of these two men, the Lord is setting things up. And although it's going to take 2 years before the cupbearer finally opens his mouth, he finally does. And that's what we pick up on in chapter 41.